Well, it's Friday the 6th of September, and there's 3 holes in the ground. As we continue to pan for gold this Virgo season, we find and consider things of value. But like the page of coins I pulled from my CBD deck this week, don't stand there mesmerised by one thing entirely. An idea that's just as good, or even an item of equal value may be discarded or still to be found at your feet. This is episode 1923 of 301 Permanently Moved.online, a personal podcast 301 seconds in length, written, recorded and edited in 1 hour by me at the JMO. Three welcomes to all and any new subscribers this week, especially those that are joining for the first time via Orbital Operations. It was in fact an offhand comment from Warren that was the impetus to get this show on the road. A big thanks to him too for the shout out. Continuing with the newsletter theme, another big thank you this week goes to the writer and author Hugh Lemmy. He mentioned Permanently Moved in his newsletter, Utopian Drivel, which can be found at hugh.substack.com. In the personal section, at the end of his essay on Britain's dad crisis last week, he said the following, quote, "I'm sure he won't mind me saying that not every episode is for everyone, but they're short enough that you listen anyway, following the ebb and flow of his intellectual life on a weekly basis. Having that constant this year has helped me ground my own writing." End quote. Thanks, Hugh. This week, he also wrote a brutally honest essay for subscribers called Working Away, reflecting on his creative discipline, the need for graft to improve his craft, and how obsessions with productivity and a healthy regime can simply be functions of depression and anxiety. He wrote that there was something suitably final about words. It's something that can be narrowed down to a word count, but they can also be a desperate attempt to reassert control over a floundering brain and floundering practice. I've mentioned before that making this podcast in an hour every week is a creative challenge that has done wonders for my mental health, something that is in the calendar and needs to get done. Some days I wake up with a clear idea of what I'm going to talk about because an idea came along in the week. Other days, like today, I start the clock and let the show emerge in the space of 20 minutes in front of me in Google Docs. Whilst my bio says that I'm a writer, theorist and strategist, I do a lot more of the last two than I do of the former. I have my own excuses for not writing. Dyslexia, and a personality that was best designated as special needs at school in the 90s, with a tendency towards perfectionism and self-doubt. Growing up, I always preferred throwing my creative energies at music rather than writing, and most of my friends who wanted to be writers have become English teachers. There is, however, something deceptively simple about words, a truth I didn't realise until I attempted my first NaNoWriMo a few years ago. I'm not sure if anyone in the audience has done it. Most people I know have tried it at least once. But for the uninitiated, you just have to write 1,600 words a day, every day, for 30 days. And at the end of it, you have a novel, more or less. Considering that this podcast is 1,000 words, it sounds simple, but in reality, incredibly hard. The longer the month goes on, the words have to keep on coming. You have good days and bad days. And some days you can knock it out, and other days you have to drag every single word from your fingertips. And the most annoying thing is when you go back to read what you've written, the good days and the bad days all disappear into one voice. There is no discernible difference between the hard words and the easy ones, because at the end of the day, they all need a good hard edit. Until my first NaNoWriMo, the last time I'd written that many words in a year, let alone a month, was writing my dissertation at university in 2006. I'd forgotten, or perhaps never appreciated, the amount of time and effort that goes into getting that many words onto a page. Writing is as much about graft as it is craft. And massive props to anyone who has ever written a novel, let alone published one, even if it's just fiction in your favourite fandom. There was a tweet going around this week that was asking the question, what is the nicest thing anyone has ever said about your writing? And my reply was, I think you should keep going, which is genuinely the most encouraging and important comment I've ever received from someone about my creative work. In fact, it should also be the default response from any of us when anyone has shared their creative life with you. There is an urgent need for us to collectively imagine new stories and new worlds, to tell stories of our own instead of being content to consume the output of the culture industry. But we can't do that if people live in fear of criticism and mockery in the form of a rage thread. It requires support and encouragement both at the individual and collective levels. Start a blog or brush the dust off an old one. I'm sure those with an RSS reader will happy to see you back. Fire up a synthesizer or pick up your guitar and make some music like you used to. Sing. Dance, do improv, whatever. Encourage those around you to do the same. Let's tell our own stories. Anne Lamott says in Bird by Bird, which I think is one of the best books on the realities of a creative life, said the following. Almost all good writing begins with terrible first efforts. You need to start somewhere.